This happened a few years ago in my old one-person flat. I had a strange feeling that something wasn't right for a few days, like I was sure that food in the fridge was less than I put back the last time. I found pillows from my couch on the floor, stuff like that. I lived alone back then, so there wasn't anyone else with access to my flat, or so I thought. Well, one night I woke up around 1 o'clock in the morning, sweating, and even though I didn't remember, was sure I woke from a nightmare. Since I was drenched in sweat, I decided to take a shower. So I put my phone up in the bathroom for music, turned on the water, and enjoyed my shower. A few minutes in, I heard the door move. I never close it, but it still never moves. I took a look at the shower curtain and saw a shadow against it, and a look at my phone confirmed someone was there, since I could clearly see a reflection in my screen that showed someone standing next to the shower curtain. It took me a lot not to scream and to keep acting like I didn't notice anything, while silently taking the shower head off the holding and turning the water all the way to hot. I'm still kinda impressed of that quick thinking. Our water got really hot when you cranked it all the way to hot, and a few seconds later steam was rising and the water hurt my feet flowing to the drain. I turned around, ripped the shower curtain open, and held the shower head right at the person behind. It was a woman. She screamed in pain. I whacked her in the face with the shower head and jumped out of the shower and ran to the door, taking the key out of the lock and locking it closed behind me. A little later she started to bang on the door, but the door didn't give. Thank God for German quality work. I called the cops and went to the kitchen to get my big kitchen knife, just for safety. I felt like my throat was closing up when I saw it missing and realized there's only one place where it could possibly be right now. The police came and arrested the woman, who turned out to have been the former person living in the flat, and was evicted after not paying rent. Seems she made a copy of the key and came into the flat when I was at work, and sometimes at night. It's possible that what woke me up in the first place was her, and honestly, I don't even want to think about it. Ever since then, I always insist that the locks are changed when I move into a new place. Update. Since a lot of people ask, I found the knife later in the bathroom, so she definitely brought it with her, and either the police disarmed her, or at some point she dropped it herself. I'm a 34-year-old female, and this happened somewhere in the 2000s when I lived at home. I lived in the corner two-story house in the estate and had the back bedroom that looked out into our back garden. We had a side gate to the garden that was always locked, and we had a high wall around the garden itself which could only really be accessed from the outside if a mate gave you a bump up or on an electricity box that was about 1 foot away from the wall near the road. So anyways, one night I'm awoken about 3 a.m. and can hear someone gently singing, speaking, and laughing as though they are directing this to someone. I assume this is my neighbors and maybe they had a friend over for drinks or something. I think nothing much of it and drift back into a light sleep. I continue to hear this singing and soft speaking voice, and I begin to realize it's been approximately 45 minutes and I haven't heard a single response from another voice. I think, shit, maybe someone's out on the street, high or drunk or something. There's a road to my right, neighbor attached to my left, and another estate to the back. Being a nosy teen, I get up to peek out and see. I can't see anyone under the street light or in my neighbor's garden, and then I look straight down into my own garden. There's a fucking man laying in my garden, perched up on one arm and swinging a butcher knife around in his other hand, while my dogs, spaniels, roll around him and look delighted with life. What the fuck? He's singing to either himself or my dogs. I run into my parents' room and they come to see what I have woken them for. My dad, who's generally a quiet man, rips straight into action mode and grabs his shotgun and torch. This is North Europe. He used to hunt pheasants and foxes. My dad runs straight downstairs. He opens the back sliding door, points the torch and unloaded gun at this guy, and yells in a manly-ass voice he's never used before, "Get the fuck out before I blow your fucking head off." This guy jumps to his feet, but quite gracefully smiles and bows before jumping up on our shed and hopping over the wall. We reported it, but never heard anything. Also, not sure why my dogs didn't bark at him. They would usually bark at anyone they don't know. But regardless, singing weirdo, let's not meet. Several years ago, I worked at a crisis unit for the acutely mentally ill. It was a 10-bed unit where individuals would come to stay as a step down from psychiatric hospitalization, or diversion to prevent psychiatric hospitalization. I often worked alone on the weekends. One Friday evening, we received an admission, Michael. Background info was provided with the referral indicating a diagnosis of antisocial personality disorder and recent release from prison after serving a sentence for murder. I completed the initial intake meeting with Michael, during which time he said some sexually explicit things to me. I made it clear that this was inappropriate and that the confidentiality was limited, and that the staff working on the unit as part of his treatment team would be privy to anything said in the interview or subsequent one-on-one sessions. He responded well to the redirection. We finished the intake and I went about the rest of my shift until about 11 p.m. that night, when he approached the office and asked if I was working alone. Luckily, at the time, I wasn't alone, and I told him that my male coworker was in the adjoining office. After this encounter, I explained the situation to my coworker, who read my shift summary and decided to sit down with Michael and tell him the way he was acting was not acceptable and he could risk being released from the program if it continued. The next morning, I was working alone from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. Around 9 a.m., I went to wake up another client, Jeremy, to administer his medications. The room Jeremy was assigned was at the end of the hallway, and he was usually slow to get up in the mornings. While I was knocking on Jeremy's door, Michael approached me to tell me he didn't appreciate that I had shared the things he said to me with my male coworker. I explained to Michael that he knew what he said was inappropriate and that he knew anything he said to me would be shared with the rest of the treatment team. Michael became more agitated and got in my face, backing me into a corner in front of Jeremy's bedroom door. At this point, Jeremy had woken up and heard what was happening outside his room. Jeremy came out of his room, stood between Michael and myself, and told Michael that he needed to walk away and cool down. Michael went back to his room, and I contacted my supervisor, who told me to document the encounter and continue my shift. Needless to say, I left that job shortly after this incident. I am thankful for Jeremy that he had the presence of mind, while also being a client with a mental illness, to intervene on my behalf. I often wonder what would have happened if Jeremy wouldn't have woken up, or if he would have been in a more severe state of mental illness and would have become agitated as well. Michael, let's never meet again. For those saying I couldn't possibly have worked by myself on a 10-bed unit, it was not a secure unit. It was a voluntary unit and was never intended for violent individuals. Michael should have never been there. He needed a higher level of care than we could provide. But to get funding, we needed beds filled. I was a bachelor's level MH worker. I administered medications, facilitated psychoeducational groups, and completed one-on-one sessions with clients every shift. I shouldn't have had to work alone, but I did. I don't know if it was legal. I'm assuming it is in my state, but I have no idea. Protocol was to call 911 if things got out of hand, and if they were really bad, to petition for involuntary hospitalization of the individual. Weekdays, there were 2 staff and a supervisor present. Evenings, there were sometimes 2 staff, depending on the day of the week. Overnight, there was 1 staff, and on the weekends, it was me by myself until the cook or cleaning person came for roughly a half hour each. It wasn't an ideal situation, but it is common in residential homes for individuals with intellectual disabilities, some personal care homes, etc., where I'm from.